Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Ready for Rome webinar today. We're so glad that you've joined us. My name is Shelly Ruel, and I am the community manager for Italia Pass. And I'm joined by my colleague, Sofia Bragaglia. She's the Italia Pass Italy Experience Specialist. And we're here today to share some of our insider tips with you about visiting Rome and some information that hopefully will help you feel more at home and hit the ground running when you get into the Eternal City. I've lived in Rome for about 23 years now, and Sofia is from Italy. So between the two of us, we have lots of years of combined experience here in Italy that we're looking forward to sharing with you today. So to get started, I wanted to talk just a moment about what is Italia Pass, because many of you are probably here today because you're an Italia Rail customer. So we have a family of brands, kind of known as the Italia brands, that includes rail, tours, car rentals, and hotels. And those brands have been around since 1987, working with millions of tourists to Italy. And our company's CEO wanted to find a way to help his customers have their best trip to Italy ever. So he came up with this program called Italia Pass, which is actually a membership. So it's the only kind of really Italy travel membership of its kind. It costs $149 dollars, and you get over $650 plus in value in this membership. So we'll be talking just a little bit today also about the different benefits in this membership in case it's something that you might want to look into for your trip to Italy. What we're going to cover today is listed here. First, we'll talk about when you arrive at FCO, that's Fiumicino Airport, which is also known as Leonardo da Vinci, and how to get into the city from the airport. It's about a half an hour outside the city. We'll also tell you a little bit about the Italia Pass Lounge at Rome's Termini Station, in case that's something you might want to check out. I'll tell you about how to get around the city, in particular, how to use public transport here in Rome. And then a little bit about eating out, some local customs, and how to avoid some of the most common tourist traps. And then Sophia will tell you a little bit about how you can get in on some complimentary access to some of the most famous monuments and sites, both in Rome and Florence, and how you can get $100 off of an Italia Tours experience. We'll wrap up then with a couple of my favorite local tips, and then we'll move into a live Q&A. That will be taking place over the chat functionality. So you'll see in the icons at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A chat box. You can type questions in there at any time throughout this presentation, and we will answer them live at the end of the presentation. And if we have more questions than 15 minutes allows for, don't worry, we're going to answer all of the questions. We'll just answer the extra ones offline, and I'll post them in the community, and you'll have a link to that. So let's get started with how to get into the city from Fiumicino Airport.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Shelly, and thank you again to everyone for joining us today. Let's get right into it. You've landed at FCO Airport, which is one of the main airports in Italy, especially if you're coming in from abroad. And you'll have a few options to get to the center of Rome from here. As you see on the slide, they're all indicated in the terminal. They're fairly easy to find, fairly easy to navigate. And of course, the first option, I'll start from the first option to reach Roma Termini. Roma Termini is the main train station in Rome. This is the terminal for all high-speed departures, or most of them anyway. And in order to reach, it's very central to Rome, so even if you're trying to reach the city center, it's the main spot, I would say. And there are two types of trains that you can take from the airport to the station. The first one is called Leonardo Express. It's a direct train that goes into Termini. It should be around $16 on Italiarail. It's an express nonstop train, so it's usually the main type of train they can get. Or there's a second type of train, which is a more local type, or a more local one. And they usually go to smaller stations in Rome, such as Trastevere or Ostiense. Those are a bit less. They're about $10 on Italiarail. And all three are considered regional trains. There's two types. There's usually regional and high speed. These are all regional trains. And really, depending on where you're trying to go, one may work better than the other. That would depend on your final destination. We generally get a lot of questions of whether or not you should book these in advance before your arrival. And I do recommend booking a little bit in advance, especially if you're traveling during high season. That would be pretty much now. It's usually May to early October. And the queues can get very long at the airport. The servers can get a bit overwhelmed. So if you want to make sure that you have your ticket once you're there and you're trying to get into Rome, I would definitely recommend doing so before your arrival. Uh, be careful though. Leonardo Express tickets are time specific, so make sure that I believe they allow for a 90-minute window to get on the trains. So definitely make sure that you're within that window. For the booking time, I would recommend booking these tickets for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours after your landing. And definitely no train out of Termini, let's say to another city, Florence, Venice, whichever, within 3 hours of arrival. This is just, to avoid delays at the airport, luggage issues, anything that's an unforeseen event, you'll want to avoid. Switching trains can be a bit complicated. So just make sure that you have enough time before when you're booking the tickets themselves. And that's pretty much it for trains. As you can see here, there's also taxis that you can take into the city. They're outside the terminal and they have a fixed rate of 55 euros. Or you can take a shuttle bus or a private transfer, which you can book with us, which will take you straight to your accommodation in Rome. Or if you're trying to go to the station, they can take you to the station. And it's with a private driver. It's the most comfortable option. You can take a look on Italia Tours on the website that we have. Or if you're curious about, if you want more information about them, you can also reach out to us and one of the specialists will get back to you. Now, should I rent a car? This is a question that comes up a lot, and there's no universal answer, but I will try to give you some tips, depending on. There's usually two types of situations where this question comes up. For our travelers, usually you'll either be exploring the cities in Italy, the main hubs and, towns across the country, or some of our travelers prefer to explore more remote areas. So depending on this, if you know, for example, that you're going to be in, let's say, Tuscany, exploring the hills and the vineyards and everything, then, or let's say the Amalfi Coast is another great example. In this case, renting a car is actually a great option. This is because driving in the countryside or rather, getting around with public transport in the countryside can be a bit complicated. So having a car is usually the easier option. Um, and it's kind of the opposite if you're visiting the cities only. So, if you're, let's say, just going to Rome, Florence, and Venice, then the best way to navigate between these cities, to travel from one to the other would actually be by train, by high speed. And once you're the city centers, there's a lot of public transport, and possibly more importantly, driving becomes kind of a nightmare. Every city has very strict traffic rules. They're not the same all over the country. Some areas you would need a permit to navigate, even parking. It can get very complicated. So generally speaking, if you're planning on sticking to the cities, a car is not really that necessary or recommended. Whereas if you're somewhere more remote, it is a good idea. Regardless of, if you decide to rent a car, you can do so on our platform Italia Drive, and all of our members get a $10 discount, which you can redeem after booking by contacting us. Another perk of being a member, of course, is the Italia Pass Lounge, which is located in Rome Termini, which is the station I mentioned before. This is an excellent spot to, just relax. If you have some free time before boarding a train, or if you're waiting for your hotel check-in time, you can relax here. And the lounge offers free Wi-Fi, espresso, refreshments. We also have free luggage storage. So if you have carry-on bags or larger suitcases that you can't bring with you for whichever reason, you can leave them with us and you can retrieve them anytime during the opening hours. And of course, we have our lovely hosts who can answer any questions that you might have about Rome or your travels, your train tickets, and they will be there to help you. All we ask, of course, is that you book the complimentary visit beforehand, just so we know that, you will be arriving and that we can welcome you properly. And now I'll hand it over to Shelley for some information on public transport within the city.
Thank you. Okay, so Rome is a very walkable city. However, it is extremely hot right now. We're in the upper 90s Fahrenheit pretty much daily now. So you may find that taking public transport is useful for you, especially in the hottest hours of the day. It's not that it's necessarily going to be that much cooler, but at least you'll be out of the sun and getting to your destination quicker. So you can decide. So if you decide to take public transport, it's called ATAC, that's the name of the company, and it's serviced mainly by buses, but there's also a subway system. It's called the Metro, that's short for Metropolitana. It only has 2 lines. It's very easy to navigate compared to other large cities that you may be familiar with subway systems. For example, New York, it's nothing like that. Rome has A line and B line, and they only intersect at one point, which is Termini train station. So if you need to change from line A to line B, it's super easy because you just have to get out at Termini. That being the case, Termini is very crowded, so you will need to be aware of your belongings for pickpocketing, and I'm going to talk to you about that in just a moment. And also there's some trams, but you probably won't encounter those very much because they tend to service the areas that are a little bit outside of the main tourist areas of the city. So now tickets are pretty reasonably priced compared to other large European cities. They cost €1.50. And this is also easy because it's not divided into zones of the city. You don't have to worry about anything in terms of, am I crossing into a different zone? Do I have to buy different tickets? No, the tickets are time limited. One ticket is worth 100 minutes, unlimited rides on all public transport. There's only one exception to that rule, and that is that you only get one ride on the subway per ticket. So what that means is once you go into the subway system, once you board the subway, you can ride the subway as long as you want within that 100 minutes. However, once you exit the subway, that particular ticket is no longer good for another subway ride. However, if you still have minutes left on the ticket, then you can use that ticket on public transport. How do you calculate the 100 minutes? The 100 minutes starts from the time of your first ride, the time that you board the first method. So if it's a bus, you're going to validate your ticket, or you're going to purchase your ticket with a tap and go, which I'll talk about. And that will be the start of your 100 minutes for your ticket. Now, tap and go is a very convenient system because in the Metro, you can tap your contactless payment method and you can enter into the Metro and that will be your ticket. You do need to use a different payment system for each rider. So one card or one contactless payment method, even if it's a smartphone payment, that is for each person. Because if you were ever to be asked by an inspector, where's your ticket, you would just show that card as your ticket. And there's tap and go on most of the buses now as well. However, if you want to have a paper ticket, those are called biglietto, and you can buy those at machines in the metro station, or you can buy those at the tabaccheria, which are the tobacconists, and those are easy to find because they have a T above the door, or at any of the newsstands throughout the city. One thing I did want to let you know about in terms of bus routes that's actually very helpful for visitors, but can also be something to be aware of, is Bus 64. So Bus 64 is a very popular route for visitors to the city because it goes all the way from that main train station we told you about from Termini. It crosses the historic center and goes across the city to the Vatican. So it hits a lot of the major tourist points. The only thing to be aware of is because it's so popular with tourists, it also tends to be a magnet for pickpockets. Now, I don't want you to worry about pickpocketing. It gets a lot of attention on social media as if Rome is this complete pickpocket, like you can't avoid pickpocketing. That is not true. I have lived here 23 years. I have never once been pickpocketed. You can absolutely avoid it. It's easy to avoid it because you just don't want to be a target. And the way that you're not a target is by being aware of your belongings and your surroundings. So especially when you're in super crowded areas like Bus 64 can get pretty packed, around the Coliseum, around the Trevi Fountain, in any area where there's people really close to you and there might be some jostling, that's a perfect place where pickpockets can do their work and not be really detected because you may not feel it. But if you're aware of your belongings, like for example, with your purse, if you put your purse as a crossbody bag, keep your hand on the purse, make sure you know where your wallet is. You will not be a target for pickpockets. You will not have anything to worry about there. All right, next, let's move on to something really fun, which is restaurants that I'm sure you're going to enjoy eating out in Rome at some of our delicious local restaurants and all the local specialties that we have here. A couple of things that you should know about in terms of local customs. We do tend to eat a little bit later here than you may be used to. So lunch generally starts around 1 or 1:30, and dinner generally starts around 8 or 8:30. And the reason I tell you that is because if you need to make reservations at a restaurant, or if you want to go out to dinner and you're thinking, well, let's just go out to dinner at 6:30, the local, really local Roman places, the kitchen's most likely not going to be open at that time. So that doesn't mean you're not going to be able to eat before these times. There's plenty of restaurants, especially in the really heavily tourist areas, that are open all day long. You can eat anytime. So that's not a worry. But what I'm talking about here is where the locals eat. And so this is something to be aware of just a little bit later, local restaurants for that cater to the local residents, which is hopefully where you're going to want to eat so you can really get authentic local food. The reason I put check, which is in Italian il conto, is because here it might be a little different than you're used to. The check isn't brought out with your food. A lot of times, for example, where I'm from in the United States, a lot of times your food will be delivered and the waiter, waitress will say, okay, here's your, I'll take this when you're ready, and they'll just set the check down with your food. It's the opposite here. Your check generally will not arrive at your table unless you specifically ask for it. And the reason for that is cultural. Here in Italy, when we go out to eat with friends and family, we are spending quality time, and the wait staff does not want to make you feel pressured that they need to turn that table. They're very respectful of this quality time you're spending with your friends and family. And generally speaking, once you have that table, you have that table for as long as you like. They don't want to feel like they're pushing you out. So unless they tell you when you sit down, which is kind of rare, but and maybe some of the more popular touristy places, they might say, look, we seat, we have a first dinner seating and a second, you have this table until X time. That's pretty rare though. I just don't want you to feel like, where's our check? The service here is bad. They're doing that out of courtesy. So just simply ask when you're ready and they'll bring it right over. Also relating to checks and the paying at the restaurant, a question that we get a lot is, do I need to leave a tip? And the answer is simple. No, you don't need to leave a tip. It's not necessarily a custom here. Most of my friends here don't leave tips. At most, if you really enjoyed the service and you want to be courteous, you can leave like €1 per person. But tipping is not a custom because the wait staff is paid a normal salary. They do not work for tips. It's just not in the culture here necessarily for wait staff in a restaurant. Same goes also for taxis. It's not very common to tip in a taxi. However, if you're paying by cash, it's convenient to round up to the next euro. So if your cab ride was like, I don't know, 12.53, it can be convenient if you could give the cab driver like 13 so he doesn't have to make small change for you. All right, so that is local customs. A couple of tourist trap type of things I wanted to point out to you. So let's start with gelato. I hope you're gonna try the gelato here. Don't tell an Italian it's ice cream. They will say it is not ice cream, it's gelato, it's different. A couple of ways you can detect if a gelato is not really authentic and kind of caters more to a touristy crowd. If you see overflowing tubs like in this photo, and you will see them downtown, it looks really spectacular and showy, but a real gelataio worth their salt would never have gelato like coming out over the top of the tub like that. And the reason is because what they do is they whip a lot of extra air into it to make it look very like exciting, like really showy, but it's not really typical to see that in a very authentic gelato shop. In fact, some of the most authentic and delicious gelato shops, you don't even see the gelato. You're just going to see behind the glass counter a bunch of metal tops, a bunch of metal lids with handles, and you'll have to look at a board for the flavors. And then they'll take the top off of the tub or the bucket and to scoop out your gelato. So that's a sure sign of an authentic place. If you see overly bright colors, that's a pretty good tip off that they're using artificial coloring, which is not something that authentic gelato places will use because it will be all natural. So the fruit colors will be more muted because they're just using the fruit itself, not any kind of artificial colors. And in terms of restaurants, two things to be aware of. So obviously, if you see pictures on your menu, that's a pretty easy tip off that that's not a local joint. That's not a place where locals go because, of course, Romans don't need to see pictures of the food that they're about to eat. They already know what it looks like. So, for example, in the photo you see here, that's carbonara. It's a very popular dish here. So yeah, avoid restaurants with pictures if you want to be in a local place. Same goes for what I call promoters. If you see people out in front of the restaurant ushering people in or trying to kind of get you to come inside, obviously that's geared towards tourists too, because the local places don't need to tell people to come in off the street. The locals already know where they're going to eat. So, are you going to get a terrible meal in a place like this? No, it'll probably be fine. However, I tell you this because you're probably going to want to try to eat very local if you can. And these are just some tip offs to places that are more generic and kind of maybe not the most authentic meal that you can get. And I'm going to provide a reference list at the end of this presentation. I'll send out an email. And in that list, I will put some of the favorite local places that I like. So you will have a couple places that you can try. Next, I'm going to pass it back over to Sophia to tell you about getting into some of the most famous sites.
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, so now for all the exciting sites that you'll get to see during your stay in Rome. Let's start from the main star, both of Rome and our membership. Our Italia Pass members get one free tour of the Colosseum, featuring exclusive access to the arena floor through the iconic Gladiators Gate. This is one of our top benefits. Everybody who goes to Rome usually wants to get into the Colosseum, which I completely understand in a second. It's one of the most impressive attractions in the whole country, really. So definitely, if you're in the city, make sure you take advantage of this benefit. And our members also get the complimentary access to the Pantheon, which is, I guess, it's a little less famous than the Colosseum, but still very much worth it. So if you just have a free afternoon, make sure to go take a visit. We also offer guided tours of the rest of the city. Some popular ones are the Vatican tours, our walking tours. Our walking tours usually span across the main areas of the city, such as Piazza Navona, the Spanish Steps, the Trevi Fountain, of course. So if you're interested in all of these, and if you want to combine it with the Colosseum as well, we have something called a Rome Tour Pass. You can find this on italiatours.com. It's a bundle, essentially, which combines the Colosseum, the Vatican, and these walking tours. It's valid for about 2 days. You can decide when to book your visits, and it's usually recommended if you have a few days in Rome, let's say 2 or 3 days, and you're trying to get the highlights, that's the most convenient option. If you choose one of our tours, whether it's the Rome Tour Pass or any other tour that we have in the catalog, please note that our members get $100 off on their first tour booking and 10% off of any subsequent tour order. So you can book all of these experiences, as I mentioned, on italiatours.com. And of course, if you have any questions or if you're not sure about the difference between certain tours, you'll see our catalog has quite a lot. So just for any questions, feel free to reach out to us as well. I would recommend booking these tours as soon as you're set on your dates. because especially in Rome, of course, it's a very, very popular destination. So especially the Colosseum and the Vatican get sold out very, very quickly, especially during high season. So if you know, there's no specific time frame to, book them. It's like, oh, it's guaranteed to be there 2 months in advance or a month in advance. My recommendation is just as soon as you know that you're going to be there, start planning for it. And I would say the ideal window would be 4 to 8 weeks before your arrival to make sure that you can find the spot. We also get very frequent questions about the dress code, especially for the Vatican and other churches in the city. So if you are planning to visit the churches, the only requirement are clothes that cover shoulders and knees, especially in the Vatican. This is very important. Um, in other places like the Colosseum, it's whatever. You can wear anything that's comfortable for you. The only thing that's valid for all of these attractions is you won't be able to bring very large items such as backpacks or strollers or even wheelchairs into the Vatican and the Colosseum. So for bags, we recommend a crossbody bag or something smaller. And if you need anything for accessibility, please reach out to us, and we have separate measures in place for that. We also wanted to mention a special offer where you can get free access to a special Vatican edition or Vatican City edition of Italy Magazine. Italy Magazine is one of our partner brands. And the special edition is for the Jubilee. It will give insider tips into visiting iconic landmarks around the Vatican during this very special and eventful year. So I would say this issue is crafted for first-time visitors, of course, as it gives a lot of very generic and specific tips on the Vatican. But also, if you've already been, I would still recommend taking a look. It's just a good refresher, and it's so easy to get access. You just have to fill out a brief survey that you can find in the community. And last but not least, the Borgia Dungeon. This is one of our more hidden gems and one of the most exclusive experiences as an ItaliaPass member. Why is this place special? This is one of the only places in the city where you can access the original ancient Roman street level. We organize visits that you can book. It's all complimentary for members. And during your visit to the dungeon, you'll hear about the fascinating history of the Borgia family, which of course is quite infamous. And you'll get to take a unique look into the Roman Renaissance. And of course, your visit will be paired with a wine tasting and an aperitivo, which is a good way of experiencing the local food culture, all led by one of our expert sommeliers. So, again, this is only accessible to our members. It's a very, very popular event. So, if you get the chance, if you have a free evening, I would definitely recommend taking advantage of it on your trip. And now back to Shelley for some local tips.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to wrap up with a couple local tips I wanted to leave you with. So the first thing is this water fountain here that you see in the photo. These are called nasoni. That's plural. Nasone would be singular. It means big nose, and the reason they're kind of lovingly called that is because of the shape of the spigot. So these water fountains are located all over the city. There's thousands of them. And as you see in the photo, water just comes out of them continuously. They don't turn on and off. It comes from a deep underground spring. It comes out really cold. So it is so convenient, especially right now because it is so hot in Rome right now. You will just bring your refillable water bottle. And if, by the way, you're a member and you go to the ItaliaPass Lounge, you will get a free reusable water bottle to take around with you. So you won't have to buy plastic. You won't have to find a coffee bar or a street food stand to buy a water bottle. Just take your reusable bottle, refill it directly from these fountains. The water is drinkable and it is really convenient. In fact, I'm going to share with you on the resource list an app that the local water utility has provided that shows where all the different Nazoni are located throughout the city. So you'll know where your next refill will be coming from, wherever you're located, wherever you're at. One other super local tip, if you don't have a water bottle and you still want to drink out of the fountain and you don't feel like cupping your hands underneath, then what you can do, locals do this, take your thumb and plug the bottom, the back pressure from you plugging that water that's coming out, it sends the water back up the spigot. There's a little, you can't see this in the photo, but there's a little tiny hole on the top. And so the water's going to start shooting out of that little hole in like an arch, like a drinking fountain. And you can just lean down and drink directly from the fountain. My only caveat to you is watch out if your people are walking by, because it has been known to shoot people with water. Although maybe right now with it being so hot, they might not actually mind that. But that's just a very local tip for you if you want to look like a pro. The other tip I have for you is in this photo you see, have an aperitivo. Sophia mentioned that at the Borgia Dungeon, they have an aperitivo for you in that experience. So you may be familiar with the most iconic aperitivo drink that you see in this photo, which is an Aperol Spritz. So aperitivo is like a pre-dinner drink with snacks. Now, it doesn't have to have alcohol in it. You can even have just like a Coca-Cola or a lemon soda. It doesn't, just whatever kind of drink you want, even non-alcoholic. And the aperitivo, the alcohol content is very low, and that's because it's a pre-dinner drink. Nobody wants to be having too much to drink before they even start their dinner. So this one in the photo is at Meccanismo, which is it's a bar and restaurant in Trastevere, right by Piazza Trilussa that I really like. And you will have that in the reference list. It's a very abundant aperitivo. For like 13 euros, you get all these snacks. And it's predetermined. They just bring the board out to you. However, in like the local coffee bars, you could even just duck into a local coffee bar around 6:30, because kind of the pre-dinner time. You could just ask for a glass of Prosecco. You could say an aperitivo Prosecco, and they will give you a glass of Prosecco. Here in my neighborhood, which isn't downtown, but it's like $4.50. It's pretty reasonable. And they may give you peanuts or potato chips, but you can be very local by having an aperitivo before you go to dinner. And that's a fun local food custom. So that wraps up our information part of this presentation. Like I mentioned, you're going to get an email from me. Now it's going to be almost 7 o'clock here in Rome, so I may not get it out to you till tomorrow. However, you will definitely have it within the next 24 hours. It's going to have links to the resources we talked about. It's going to have a recap of the Q&A that we're about to go into right now. And it will also have a recording of this webinar. So in case you joined late or we were talking too fast or you want to see something again, you can just click on that. We upload it to our YouTube channel. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Stop share. And you can go down to the Q&A box where the icons are if you have any questions that you want to ask us. Don't be shy. We have lots of local experience. Feel free to type your question in. We don't actually have any questions yet, being a little shy this evening, but if anything is on your mind, go ahead and type that in while we're here. And if you think of something after the webinar is over and you think, oh, I should have asked this question, just pop over to our community. It's community.italiapass.com. So it's so super easy to remember. And I'm the host over there, and you can ask whatever questions you have about trip planning, and I will answer those questions there. All right, well, I see that there are no questions today, so that's perfectly fine. Like I said, if you have anything later, we will be happy to answer that over in the community. Want to thank everybody for joining us today. And I see someone raised a hand. Oh, we've got a question. See this? It's the thread of we're about to shut this down that people go, oh, I thought of something. What times does the Leonardo Express run? I don't have the exact times in my head, but I believe it's, oh gosh, do you know, Sophia? I believe it's like 5-ish in the morning until close to midnight. It covers a pretty broad. Yeah, it's basically pretty much all day. They make sure because of like, it's kind of coinciding with the flights that arrive. So, because that's the purpose of the express train, is to help people who are getting off their flights to come into the city. Do you want to take the next one, Erica?
Yeah, sure. Is locked storage at train stations safe? The one in our lounge, yes, absolutely. There's a host at all times during the opening hours. And if you decide to leave your luggage overnight, everything is locked, so it is very safe. I cannot speak for other. I know there's other facilities in other train stations, but we're not affiliated with those, so I'm not. It would depend on the facility, on the specific facility, I would say.
Alrighty.
Once you get to Termini, how do you figure out where your train to another city is? That's a good question, actually. You'll see there's a lot of signs once you get to the train station, all of them, especially Termini, because it's such a big one. And you'll see there's very big screens. Usually they're way up on the wall, where you will find your train number, the where you're going, where it's coming from, where it's going to, and the platform that you will need to reach. If you have platform, let's say 20, there's usually signs saying, oh, platforms 1 to 10 this way, 10 to 20 this way. So yeah, just check those big screens and check for the little arrows to find the platform.
Yeah, and one other thing that just came to mind that someone asked once in this Q&A, because sometimes when you're having to connect, the train company will automatically give you like a 15-ish minute window. And I think someone was concerned, is 15 minutes going to be enough? Say, for example, you have to change trains in Florence, you're going all the way to Venice, for example, and the train company has you changing. Generally speaking, if it's just a change, you're just going to get off that train, go directly to your next train, that's enough time, even in the big stations. But you will need to know what track you're heading to. That's helpful. And in the Q&A recap that I send you, I will put a link to a website that will show you what track in real time your next train is departing from, so that you're prepared when you pull into the station, you know you're going to need to go to track 15. That can give you some peace of mind to know exactly where you're going. But the distances from track to track are pretty minimal, especially in the smaller stations, so not to worry. All right, well, it looks like that covers it for today. So thank you for the few questions. We appreciate that. And thanks again for joining us. And we hope that you have a wonderful trip in Rome, and buon viaggio.
Thank you, everyone. Buon viaggio.